So here with the man whose reputation precedes him, has trained a number of highly regarded quarterbacks in the past, Mr. Steve Clarkson. So Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, glad to be here.
All right, so let's start off first with talking about some of the, your lineage, your quarterbacks that you've trained in the past. Kind of give the viewers a rundown of some of the guys you've worked with.
Well, it goes a long ways. Probably the more notable ones are Ben Roethlisberger, currently with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've had Matt Leinart, the Heisman Trophy winner. Oddly enough, one of my earliest quarterbacks was Scott Frost, now the new head coach at Nebraska. Steve Sarkisian, a offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. Just to name a few. I've had quite a few kids, and a few kids that have played this game. Shea Patterson, obviously, being one we'll mention. I had KJ Costello, another one. Trevor Lawrence, another one. So there's quite a few players.
So obviously Michigan, they now have Shea Patterson. He's coming into the fold for the maize and blue. Let's get a little background on Shea before we start talking about how he might fit at Michigan. Just take me back to when you started working with him and the progress that you saw him make under your tutelage.
Well, I started with Shea. He was just finished his freshman year, and he was actually, at that time, he was an Arizona commit. And he had just moved to Louisiana, and back then he had this unique ability to be one of the more creative players I had ever seen. He was kind of a hybrid of a Fran Tarkington, Brett Favre, if you will. His throwing motion was one that I had never seen before in terms of just the sheer quickness of it. If you ever watch him throw, it's like you don't even see his arm move in some cases, especially all the intermediates, the quick pop stuff, any of the RPO stuff, the ball just flies out of his hands. It's like I didn't even see him throw the ball. And then it's when the play breaks down that he has that special gift. And the biggest thing is he remains a passer. And I think that's the thing, that he extends the original play, and he's very creative. So he's very left brain oriented.
So, the transition from being in a spread offense to going into more of a pro style concept, how big of a transition is that typically for quarterbacks, and how do you think the transition will work for Shea?
Well, his high school, they ran a lot of under center as well, and so he's when he trains, all the quarterbacks that I've worked with, we always work under center as well as playing placement in the shotgun. So that's a little overrated. Even most of your pro game, you're talking about 80% of the snaps that are taken in the NFL are from shotgun. So your footwork is very similar. It's just kind of you get a head start. But in terms of will that make a difference in playing with maybe 2, in some cases 3 tight ends? It won't have an effect on Shea because he's been exposed to that before.
So from a route concept standpoint, from a read progression standpoint, how different, and not talking specifically about Michigan, just in general, going from a spread to a pro, is that a big part of the transition?
Well, the throws are certainly different because when you're talking more progression, you're talking more reset for the most part. Shea has done a lot of rhythmic type throwing, but he's been practicing at this for a while. Like I said, I've had him since he was a freshman in high school, and any quarterback that I've worked with, we put him through the gamut. So we're not going to be one-dimensional. We're going to be prepared for everything. Shea's always trained that way. His off-season workouts have always been that way. He'll have no problem doing that.
So I'm not asking you to tell me how you think he's going to do, but kind of take me through what you think the most difficult part of the transition will be. Understanding there's probably going to be some hiccups. So he steps in, he begins practicing this spring. What's going to be the biggest hurdle for him to clear as he competes for the job at Michigan?
The biggest hurdle he's going to have is, will he be ruled eligible for football season? If he's ruled eligible, I have no doubt that Shea Patterson is going to be the starting quarterback at Michigan. And I'm just me talking my opinion. I just know the kid. He's uber competitive. It's not about what's behind him. It's who's he got to beat in front of him. And what I mean by that, who's the next team? Who's the next front? Who's the next coverage? That's how he's wired.
All right. So put yourself in the coaching staff shoes for a moment. I'm not asking you to reveal any trade secrets if you talk to them about it, but as you've seen their offense, what sort of adaptive things do you think are likely when you have a quarterback like Shea? What changes do you make from a conventional pro style offense? What tweaks can you make that might cater to his skill set?
Well, that's the biggest thing. You don't have to make any tweaks to cater to his skill set. His skill set is adaptable to anything you put him in. That's the uniqueness that people will find about him. Obviously terminology is going to be a lot more, a lot more verbiage there in a Harbaugh system, but it's not anything he's going to have a problem with. Trust me.